So today is Pruning of Grapevines 2020. That's up next. Hello everyone, this is Dwayne with Edge of Nowhere Farm, and we're coming to you here today. It is early morning, January 2020. It is a cold one this morning. We're down in the 30s. It's going to be a beautiful sunny day today, and so today is the perfect day for us to get the pruning done here on the old farm. First thing we should probably talk about is how Lori and I go about pruning our grapevines. So we have, there's a total of 5 different varieties here surrounding our garden beds at the old property. However, we have 3 primary varieties that we really grow for production. What you see behind me here would be our flame grapes. Those are seedless red grapes, fantastic grapes. They grow really, really well for us here. Those are a spur pruned variety, so we'll be showing you that. Here to my right, we have our Manuka grapevines. There's 6 of those across the front of the garden beds here. Those we actually keep in a spur pruning setup as well. You can do either one, from what I understand. However, we do keep them spur pruned. And on the other side, which you can't see, would be our Thompsons, which unfortunately we tried to spur prune the first year, and so we really kind of made that a disaster because it's a cane pruned variety, but we'll show you that as well. Let's talk a little bit also about what we're going to need today as far as tools to get the pruning done. First thing would be your standard pruners. So these are my Corona pruners. By the way, we have all of this in our Amazon shop, which I'll link below, but I have my Corona pruners. We'll be using these primarily today. That's what most of our pruning is going to get done with. Second thing would be a set of Loppers. These are some Fisker Loppers. So we'll use these where we need to for our larger canes, or if we need to do any pruning of the individual spurs. I have a Corona razor tooth saw, so if for some reason we need to take off a larger piece, I'm not anticipating that, but if we do, I have a saw. And lastly would be our Sun Joe chipper. So any of the prunings that we need to run through the chipper, we're going to do that here at the very, very end. One final thing, so we are going to be actually sending all of our prunings that are larger than a pencil diameter, those are going to Reed. So Reed's going to actually be grafting those onto his rootstock that he's been growing out, and those are going to be available. So we'll have some ourselves, so we'll be able to take some of our actual grapevines along with us to the new property, and he'll have those available as well. So I know I've had a couple of you ask for cuttings off of a couple of these, and it's not something that we do. However, this year we won't have any because they're all going to go to Reed so that they're available for people here in the Phoenix, Arizona area. So now let's get down to the actual nitty-gritty of pruning. So we're going to actually start with our flame grapes. So what I'm going to do, you're going to see Lori and I go through. We work as a team to get this down to our spur cuttings. So you're going to see Lori and I go through and cut the majority of the vines out. And then what we'll do is give you guys a close-up and show you exactly how we choose which spurs we're going to keep for next year. So let's go ahead and get that done now. Okay, so you can see we got all of this ready to continue pruning. So now again, these are spur pruned. You can see our spurs in several spots here. Now these vines, they're 4 years old, and we have a whole lot of renewal going on in here. So you can see we have our cord on here. So this is about 3 years old as far as when we train this up on both sides. So now what I'm looking at is I'm trying to find spurs that are going to give me different canes that are at least a pencil in diameter. So I've got a few that are really, really small. So like this one here, I'm going to go ahead and just take off. I know I'm not going to need that. It's a little too small. Another one here that's too small as well. So that one's going to come off. I have this one here. As far as spacing, I'm trying to get spacing about the span of my fingers, so about 6 to 8 inches as far as spacing between each one of these spurs. So I have, starting from this side here, I have a good spur here, I have another good spur here, I have a random cane that decided to shoot up here, so I'm going to go ahead and take this one off because I don't need that. As I continue to go, I've got a very, very small cane pointing to the back. I have another cane here that's pointing to the side. I don't want that. I have another spur right here. So this one I think I do want to keep. I'll come back to that in a second. I have 2 spurs right here that are very, very close together. So I'm going to need to make a decision between these 2 as to which one I want to continue with. Now, as good as this cane is here, it's a nice strong cane. This one here is more vertical. And then as far as spacing, this one is a little further away from this spur. So what I think I'm going to do, I think I'm going to go ahead and take this one out. Before I do that, I'm going to lose this. I also have 2 that are pointing down and coming back up, so I'm going to go ahead and lose those. So those are going to come off completely. And those are going to be good cuttings for Reed. Get those behind Lori. So I'm going to lose that spur, so it leaves me with this one here. So now this is the first year we've actually gotten a chance to really decide on spur locations. So I really kind of like this spacing. I have 1, 2, 3, 4-ish, 5, and then I get to my center here, almost 6. So maybe still a little bit crowded in here, but I think for the most part, that's going to be good. So as I continue to move over, I needed to make a decision here. I have 2 spurs that are very close together. As far as the spacing between spurs, I've got a good amount of spacing between these 2, so I think I'm okay here. This spur looks a little more robust. It's got a lot of vertical growth, which is what I want. So I think what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lose this spur completely. All right, now that I have my spurs set, I need to come back through and I need to take off any growth that I don't want to have go into next year. So I'm going to start from the spur down here at the end. So you can see I have several shoots off of here that I could choose from. I want to choose the most robust of the growth, and I want to have at least a couple different nodes here that I'm going to wind up getting growth from. So now this one looks like my strongest. It's also the most vertical. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and lose the rest of the growth off of this spur from last year, leave this one. So now what I'm looking for is I'm actually looking for buds. So now I've got several different buds. I want to cut back to 2 buds. A bud is what you see right here. You can see, let me get my glove off. You can see right here a little bit of white. Those get real fuzzy when they start to break bud. But I have one on the bottom, I have one here, so that would be 2 buds, and then I have a 3rd one down here. So I definitely don't want to go any higher than that. I don't want to have that much growth going on because I want to make sure it's going to give me fruit. So what I'm going to do, I've got 1, 2, 3 buds. So I'm going to take this off right above that 3rd bud. And you can see that's nice and green, so that's going to give me new growth. Real happy with that one. So then what I do is I go through each one of these. So I've got several different spurs. I do the exact same thing from one to the next until I have this completely pruned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop talking to get to pruning so you guys can see what this looks like at the end. So we're done. So you can see how that first vine turns out. If Lori wants to slide in just a little bit more, you can see how we have all of the spurs set up. This one's probably a little bit taller than I would typically want it, but spacing wise we did pretty good. You can see they're all vertically facing, ready to be up, get up to this 6-foot level where we have our EMT pipe. And then as we go down, you can see the rest of the vines. So really, really happy with how these are turning out here at 4 years in. Got a lot of good solid growth. I think we've got some really good spur spacing at this point. So I'm really looking forward to the crop off of these. Of course, that's assuming that we're actually here for it. If not, the new owners are going to have some very, very good looking grapevines and some great production. So now if Lori wants to peek down that way, what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and get these manukas pruned. And essentially what we're doing is the exact same thing you just saw us do with the flame grapes. There's literally no difference. We're going to come through, trim them all down. I'll come back through, get all the spur pruning done. So we'll kind of get a quick before before and afters. Like that, we're done. So we have this completed, got a little pile there. We're gonna go ahead and get shredded or chipped up, but we've got our cuttings set aside for reed. This is done. Now what we're gonna do, we're actually gonna skip over that trellis, which has a princess grape and an Arizona Canyon grape, get to the other side because we need to figure out what we're gonna do with our Thompsons. Let's go peek at that. So here we are on the other side, and these are our Thompson grapevines. Now, the challenge we have here is when we first put these in the ground and did our first round of pruning, we messed up. Didn't know any better, and we actually spur pruned these, and these are supposed to be cane pruned. Learned pretty quick the way these grow. You can see why they are really ideal for cane pruning. So what we're gonna need to do is we're gonna have to come back and actually reestablish these. So I need to get a head down below this 3-foot wire here, and we need to hopefully get a couple of canes. I may have 1 or 2 of these that won't have one side this year. So let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna go ahead and come through and cut out the middle here so I get an idea of what the canes are gonna look like. We are gonna cut a little bit higher because we are gonna have to lay hopefully a couple of canes down so we can get some fruiting off of these. So Lori and I are gonna go ahead and go through, cut these back, and then come back and let's figure out how to get these renewed. Okay, so we're done, we're ready to go. So now we're gonna have to do some heavy pruning on these because we have to pretty much renew all these. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and choose this one here because I think it's gonna be the simplest. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna choose 2 canes from this year. So this year's growth that are at least a pencil in diameter. This is a good one here, and I think this is a good one here. So essentially what it narrows down to is we should have started this off as just a single head. Unfortunately, I split it. So we're gonna come back down to a single head, which will probably be here because it's got the strongest growth and it's fairly center. And then we'll utilize these to actually be our canes for this year. So I'm gonna get to work, go ahead and get all this cut off so I can show you what this is gonna look like here in the end. Okay, so we're done. So you can see, tell you what, I'm not afraid to prune my trees, you guys know that, but that was tough to do. So you can see we're reestablishing the head of this Thompson grapevine. All I need to do is get some gardener's tape to tie this down. I'm gonna leave this as kind of my backup in case we have any issues here. You know, one of the things that we saw this year is we had a tremendous amount of growth on these vines. However, we had very little production compared to the prior year. And I'm confident that a big problem, of course, was what we were doing and how we were pruning it. So really looking forward to seeing how this is gonna go. But Lori and I have some work to do. We need to get the rest of these done. Once we're done, we're gonna come back to you. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so we're done. So we got these hopefully renewed. So you can see, for the most part, we got 2 arms on each one of these. The idea right now is we have to establish a head underneath this wire. So that's our challenge right now, is to get a head established. So we went ahead and kept, hopefully we got 2 canes, kind of a half cane on one of these. So hoping we get some of that. Really looking forward to see how these do, because I'm really counting on taking that much vegetation off that they'll focus more on fruit production. Really curious to see how the canes do. And of course, going forward, we know that any cane prune varieties that we put in onto the new farm, yeah, we will start this way. So that wraps up the vast majority of our grapevine pruning for this year. Now we still have our princess grapevine and our Arizona Canyon grapevine on the trellis. We will come back, take those down. I don't know for sure whether or not Reed's going to use the Arizona Canyon grape for this year's production. I am going to bring him some cuttings, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed he can get a few of those done for us, because we do have a couple of arbors we're going to be putting in at the other property. Would love to have those there. And then of course it'd be kind of great to have an Arizona Canyon grape variety available on a local rootstock. So don't know for sure if that's going to happen, but we're going to bring all those cuttings over to Reed today, so he'll have those today. We've got the back of the truck basically full of cuttings, so really looking forward to seeing how that turns out. It's amazing how good this looks once you get all these pruned out and ready for the season. I really like the way this looks, nice and clean. Well, with the exception of a couple bundles of cuttings we still need to go through. However, it looks great. You know, one of the things about grapevines is you have to do this in order to get production out of your grapevines. You need to cut them way, way back. 90% or so is what you're looking for as far as how much you're cutting them back. So that way the vine itself can actually focus on fruit production as opposed to vegetation. So we got this wrapped up. I'm really hopeful that the new owners will eventually really appreciate these vines and really appreciate the fruit of this labor. So just want to thank you for joining us today. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. Questions or comments, leave those in the comment section down below. Instagram and Facebook, we post content there you won't see here on the YouTube channel. And our Amazon shop, I'll leave a link down in the description. That is a free, painless way to help support the channel. If you start with that link, it doesn't matter what you buy, you help to support us here. So just want to thank you for joining us today and remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere, so can you. So now that I have my it's cold, I can't even talk. Let's see if this little foamy thing makes a difference. There we go. Oh, hold on, I need to get the test.